Our fears are there for a good reason. I have great respect for fear. And people tell me they've awoken and they have no fear. I just feel like, well, you're not paying attention, because life is very scary. Bad things happen to good people all the time. The whole of our civilization could collapse. Others have. And these are worthy things to be aware of. However, there is another paralogical pole, and it would be equally foolish not to take that into account. And the other paralogical pole is there is a true magic to life, and there's a fundamental goodness in existence, which has got us from hydrogen to this. And actually, contrary to popular belief, a huge amount is going very, very well in the world. What a great question that is, and one that we should be asking each other all the time. And now, because it's suddenly really important. Because we all got our news from the same place, and now we all get our news from different places. And what I'm coming across is people who've got very different versions of the world depending on what news source they're going to. And I'm guessing that's where the question comes from, which is why I think it's a fantastic question. So what I try and do in response to that is get my news from many sources. I avoid those that I've come not to trust. I will channel flip between different perspectives on the TV channels. I use Apple News. I get sent a lot of things. I look online. But the underlying thing I'd say, which is most important to me, and I think we need to keep saying it to each other, is I doubt everything. Some people have turned to the traditional strong man, that old image. And I think it happens when people are frightened and when they feel they're losing something and when it feels like there's chaos. You know, Brazil's a great example. You know, if you've got gang warfare on such a scale, then there is a tendency to go, well, we just need the biggest gangster to run the state because no one else can handle this. I think a lot of Russians feel the same about Putin. My Russian friends try and explain to me why Russians like Putin, and it's the same. It's like, well, the whole society is run by gangsters. So you need somebody who's just more mean and more, than any of them, because that's, and that's anathema to me, but I kind of get that. And then there's the whole men-woman thing going on, and this explosion of, and like everything that I see, I think it has two sides. I think the positive side is huge, which is that there's a voice for the sort of thing that, I certainly don't want my daughter or wife or any woman to experience, which would be just that abuse. And that is huge and very powerful. And then at the same time, there's another side to it, which has been very divisive, I think. Because the other day I was thinking about the whole PC thing. We're the idea that we should be correct or careful with our speech, and my feeling is actually we're nowhere careful enough. So what happens is that huge generalizations are made. Men oppress women. Well, that's just not true. What happens is some men in some situations are abusive to women, and if we can get that, then you need that nuance to keep everyone on the same to allow us to be allies, not power rivals. And that's true across the races, across the sexes. And what we're fighting at the moment, I think, is we're not doing that. It's coming from a good place, but we're not doing that. So somehow we have to find a deeper sense of connection beyond the shouting. I had to let go of the old, and that's always scary. I've got a family, and it's a big, ooh, okay, yeah, let's do it. But I've taken those risks all my life, and it's too late to stop now. Yeah. Throughout my life, there's been periods, I think it's quite common, of like going into the dark. I don't mean in a negative way, although it can be negative. It can be disorientating and scary, and of transformation. And the creativity comes from it always. I had to try and remember that, because often if I forget that, it feels like, oh, what's happening? And then you remember, oh, I know what's happening. This always happens. I go in, there's this period of, whoa, everything's moving, and then I come out with something brand new, which is born from that process. The birth of my daughter And one of the things that I've been really conscious of recently is having to differentiate awakening into waking up from and waking up to. Everything for me comes in these paralogical pairs. It's just the nature of the paradox of existence. So that we've got a lot of people at the moment talking about, I'm now awake, and I now see the world as a big conspiracy. And then you've got other people on the other side going, I'm now awake, and I see it's all being run by the industrial complex. And in a way, they're right. What's happened is that we get born into a particular culture at a particular time in history, and we literally imbue its language and its concepts. That's all we've got. So everyone does that. Brought up in this religion or this subculture or our family or friends. And then the process of awakening, the first step in it is when you push your head above that consciously and go, hang on, is any of this true? Is this right? So anyone who's listening to this will have done that. Otherwise they wouldn't possibly be listening to this, probably. That there has to be a moment where you step out and go, whoa. And that is the waking up from. But the waking up to depends on what comes into your view and your natural propensity. So for me, I was lucky. The waking up to was to this big non-dual oneness. And that, I think, is the most emergent thing we can wake up to. But we can also wake up to a cult. I did a bit of that, actually, as well. You can wake up to fake news. You can wake up to conspiracy theories. You can wake up to woo-woo. You can anything, actually. And so we need to be careful of these two things. So again, even when we wake up, our greatest ally is conscious doubt, because that allows us to question it, and then we find if it's solid for us. Once doubted, we're conscious. And it doesn't mean you never accept anything. It just means that you question it first. One of the things which I think is disorienting and exciting, I hope, for people who follow my work, is that it doesn't stay still very long. And the reason I do what I do was because that's what I wanted. I wanted a way of being in the world that I could get away with, which would allow me to just follow this thing which has been leading me since I was a little kid. And it hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's speeding up. I walk a lot at the moment. I live in Glastonbury, very close in the middle of the town. I'm very close to the Somerset Levels. I just walk on the Somerset Levels out to the nature sanctuary because I can think and I talk to myself, really, just hours talking to myself, disagreeing with myself, and seeing what comes up. And that's where I do philosophy. But also it's where I'm doing this. Right, where's this one again? So I think I know, and I think what I need to do, what I've developed over the last 20 years, is if it was old, it would be called a tradition. But it's not old, so I don't know what you call it. But there's now a body of philosophy which is changing and growing, but it's got a coherence to it that I didn't think I would achieve. But it's there, and it's brought together spirituality and science, but without diminishing spirituality. So so much of what brings together spirit and science actually doesn't, in my view, do that. But this really, or it's an attempt to, which I think is worthy of attention. And alongside that, there's these practices which I've been working on, which are incredibly powerful, and which give nearly everyone who I spend a day or two with a direct experience of this enormous love and connection. I can pretty much guarantee it. I can't guarantee it completely, but I'm astonished what happens, and everyone is. I got this stuff, and what it needs is to come together and develop an identity. And identity is a dangerous thing because it can lead to all sorts of problems, but it's also a necessary thing because then it exists in the world in its own right. And then people can take it up and agree with it, disagree with it, become part of it. It can have a life. So I think I'm going to give this whole approach to life and spirituality a name. And I think it's going to be called unividualism, because it's about becoming what I call a unividual. And this is words from the philosophy in the book, but a unividual essentially is an individual who has become conscious that they are one with the universe. So they've discovered a universal element to their nature. They've realized, perhaps to use language which you might use, they've realized that they are an individual expression of the source going to the source. and that they are no longer just this isolated, separate self, but they're not that, but they still are that. They're still a human individual on a human journey, and that's really important. And the evolutionary philosophy is about how that has emerged, so that it explains and supports this evolutionary emergence, and then the techniques allows you to directly experience it. So I think the next phase is to say this, to actually give it a name, an identity, and give people a chance to look at it and see whether it helps. These guys are at the forefront of it, and so it's a little bit concerning that they say it. My own sense, I'm a real optimist, but that's my personality. So what I see is, wow, this could be great, couldn't it? I really want to see a world. I've always wanted to live in a world where it was not about the things I had to do. It was about the things my heart wanted me to do. And I've tried to create that world for myself and share it. But so the idea that so much of what human beings have had to do can be replaced and done better, like the idea that I can find any piece of information I want within 30 seconds on my phone is just the wisdom of the world, 2 seconds away. I mean, so I think both and is my answer, as always. So the positive side is, God, this could free us. This could increase the quality of our lives. This is to harness that intelligence. I don't myself think that machines are going to become conscious for all sorts of philosophical reasons. I don't think that's the sort of thing that can happen to a machine. So I don't think that's a worry. Could they get out of control? Yeah. Should we be careful? Yeah. The problems that probably will arise, we haven't even thought of. They have, the technologies. No one thought of global warming when they developed the Industrial Revolution. It just seemed like a good idea. But there was another side, and it has been a good idea, but there was another side. So be cautiously optimistic. I mean, my sense is that what is definitely happening is that people have now, we've already got the software, where people are deliberately monitoring comparable things so that the software can learn. And I think that's what's freaked out Bill Gates and Elon Musk is learning, because that's exponential. Once a machine learns and then learns how to learn better, it will just, it's going to move so fast. So I think there's two problems with AI. One is who owns it, because if it falls into the hands of a small elite, the rest are no longer necessary and a burden, and that could be horrendous. If it's taken into the hands of the collective of humanity in general and dealt with in a caring, compassionate way, could set everyone free. That's the one problem. The other thing is the AI itself. What will happen if especially if it's unconscious, actually, if it just runs out of control? And I think that's up to us with all of our technologies. A bit like, there's serious worries about GM foods, for instance. I mean, I think it could be a very beneficial thing, but it could also be disastrous. We need to just be smart. And the great thing about machines so far is there's always an off button. No. I do not think that we are in the times predicted in the book of Revelation. I think people have thought that ever since the book was written. Especially 1,000 years ago, of course, massively they thought it. Turn of the millennium now, people have thought it. For me, just from the way I look at reality, first of all, I studied in depth the people who wrote all these books, and I think it's a Gnostic fantasy. It's not about anything. It's in that way. It's completely misrepresented. And it's written, but deeper, my response. For me, the idea that someone 2,000 years ago can say what is going to happen now is the most horrendous, ghastly idea I can imagine. My whole soul rebels against it. I loathe it with a passion, because for me, what I'm in is creative. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to create it ourselves. It hasn't been written down in some old book because someone saw some visions. It's like we are creating this. That's the whole point. The universe is the manifestation of ever greater potentials in a creative movement which doesn't know where it's going. That's the whole point. And that we enter into it as conscious beings, not as something that, you know, when people see time as something which is illusory or as fixed or as kind of laid out in advance, it's like then this whole conversation is a waste of time. It has no purpose, because what I'm going to say could have been predicted. I just think I'm saying it. My ideas are no value because they were all being written in the book. So that, for me, I rebel against that view strongly. I feel it's important for our human dignity and for meaning in life that we see time as creative and important. I mean, there is evidence that many of the early Gnostic groups were using hallucinogens, particularly mushrooms. There's a famous book on that by John Allegri about linking Christianity to early mushroom youth. Almost certainly the Greek mysteries, which is what Christianity is based on, were using hallucinogens. It's a visionary experience, and a bit like, I'm sure it was very important to him. But for the rest of us, it's like, beware that someone will find your meditation diary in 2,000 years' time and go, "Oh, it's predicting." It felt like, there's huge dangers in the world to do with what's happening with the whole environment and planet and all sorts of stuff, and socially, and then there's all these good things. I mean, so many good things happening, quite incredible. And then suddenly there's been this shift, and we've got the figures we talked about earlier, Donald Trump, and this kind of rise of this kind of narrow identity based, whether it's on the left or the right, actually, this kind of like, I'm a this and I'm opposed to you, or I'm oppressed by you, or that kind of tightening. Whereas I thought it was going to. So now I feel like, God, I'm going to be surprised. This is just unfolding in such a strange, kind of interesting but scary. And so if I had to push and make a prediction, I would go, I suspect that the good things will get better because they seem to be happening apace. So I think unividualism, the unividual, is taking off, where there's never been so many human beings who care about other human beings they'll never ever meet. That is a unique phenomenon in history. It's never happened before, but huge numbers care about people in other cultures, different backgrounds, different colors, different races. They really care about them, and that's amazing. There's never been a time when there's been so much cross-species care. I mean, people care about polar bears. Polar bears would tear them to shreds, but they care about them, and that's amazing. That's beautiful, and shows us that we're moved a huge distance. And then, of course, there's underneath it, there's a real spiritual awakening happening for a much smaller group, but it's happening. So I suspect that will increase. And at the same time, probably for a while, the other things might still play out, and it might get more scary, and a feeling there's more division. What I want to see happen is for us to recognize what we're in, to see the miracle of existence, to not just wander through life half asleep and miss what it is, and to create a culture of kindness in which we support each other realizing our own deepest potentials, because that's what the whole universe is, a process of realizing ever deeper potentials, and we are the leading edge of that as far as we know in this neck of the universe. So we to have a place where we really supported each other and made that possible, and so we could accept our differences, in fact love them, and help people make that journey of life, because there's so much. I mean, our previous generations have done a huge amount to help us do it. I mean, the fact that we could be sitting here in completely different geographical locations, talking on the internet with enough food and security. I mean, these are incredible gifts that were given to us by our ancestors, for which I'm hugely grateful. And then it feels like, okay, but we just need to just take that to the logical conclusion, which is, let's make kindness the center of what we do. But do that through supporting our individuality, not by suppressing it, by just actually letting us flower as individuals.